Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Region 7 Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting. And I hand it over to Leo Wilson, our chair.
Great. Well, I was going to say all of that.
Okay. You pointed at me.
No, I mean. So again, welcome everyone. It's Monday, June 12th, and this is the Region 7 Stakeholder Advisory Committee. I'll start the meeting with the same comments we start all of the meetings. The role of SAC, as outlined in the charter, is to play a key supporting and collaborative role by providing input and assistance in examining community challenges and opportunity related to land use, preparation of goals and strategies to implement a regional vision, and recommending changes in zoning. So as we continue our discussions, I'll remind everyone that that's what we're here for, and let's try our very best to stay on task. So that's a welcome and the call to order. Announcements. Patrick, where are we with announcements tonight?
I don't have any announcements that are specific to our work here in the county. The only thing I would say is I'll give everyone a heads up. The city of Annapolis is going to be releasing a draft of its comprehensive plan for public input. I think I was told the end of this week. And so either this week or next week. So be on the lookout for that. It is something that we, with our planning work, we want to coordinate with them, and we have been. So that's the only announcement that I have right now.
Patrick, if you guys have a mechanism with which to provide a link to that when you see it, if you could send that out to the group, it'd probably be worthwhile, because I know and ours looks like, so we'd like to make sure that the rest of the committee has the ability to look at it in the interim between our meeting and the next one. So
on that subject, would there ever be an opportunity for our committee, if we had some comments to send as a group to send to the city?
and that's a good question.
Because we're doing regional planning and they're kind of inside of our regional planning.
Yeah, I think your point's well taken. Why don't we take a look at the information that becomes available to us when that happens,
Right.
And then review it. And maybe we can have a discussion about what we'd like to do with that information. I think that might be a nice idea. So if you see it before I do, if you could just let me know, and maybe we don't want to call and talk about how that might work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So my favorite part of the meeting is about to start. This is our public comment section here. Again, I'm going to remind the speakers they're limited to 2 minutes each. Written testimony of any length may be submitted through Region 7 at aacounty.org. We received one that Patrick just handed out that came in, I think, after we posted everything else. So we'll read through that. So how many people would like to speak on the show of hands, if you don't mind? Well, it's not so bad. Great. I just want to make sure I'm watching on time. I'm just going to remind everyone from the public too, if you're giving repeat testimony from someone who started to talk before, you can just let us know, and we'll add your name to the list of people who have that seat. Just in an effort to save us some time. And we're going to start over here. Do you mind starting for us?
No, I do not.
Okay, I'm going to pass these out because we kind of provide a map for those who want to understand where these pieces are happening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maureen Ahmed, and my husband Ron and I live at 3 Papel Road. I am here tonight on behalf of my neighbors Thomas and Pam Storm at 1 Papel Road, and Ron's aunt Nancy Cox, who owns the property behind us at 3B Papel Road. Our homes and properties sit directly behind the Weems Creek Medical Center, which is located at 600 Ridley Avenue. We are surrounded on 3 sides by the medical center property. Our homes and the other homes on Papel and Acorn Road existed before the arrival of the medical center. As part of the Region 7 considerations, we are asking that our street remain purely residential. However, keeping our street residential is now threatened by the recent zoning change for the Weems Creek Medical Center property that sits on Papel Road. It has been changed to C2. This C2 designation would allow for potential subdivision and commercial development all around our home and on the residential Chapel Road. This is not our design. Therefore, we are requesting that the zoning of C2 for that arm of the Williams Creek Medical Center property along Chapel Road revert to its previous zoning of R2C2 to prevent potential subdivision and development as commercial and to allow Chapel Road to remain residential. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and thanks for the diagram. If we can make sure that gets added into the record along with the comments, that'll be helpful. Let's go on to our next speaker on this side of the room. Oh, that's a great idea. So, did you have your hand up, Mr. Kraus? I did. Okay, well, we're gonna.
We're good. My name is Ted Kraus. My name was mentioned a couple of times at the last meeting, and I thought it might be appropriate for me to come and show my face, my smile, and give you some comments about my background and my role in property ownership on Ridgely Avenue. I own 4 properties that face Ridgely Avenue. I could identify them on the screen. In fact, I'll just walk over and identify them because it's somewhat critical to what I'm going to say. I own these 3 here, and then this one parcel, 2 parcels here that also face Ridgely Avenue. I am a long-term historic preservationist for more than 50 years. I've been restoring with hands in the dirt historic properties starting in the 1970s in San Diego and continuing in the 1990s in Annapolis. I have a certain amount of, I think, experience in evaluating opportunities for distressed properties. Over a decade ago, I looked at that wedge of land at the southeast corner of Ridgely Avenue, just north of Route 50, and said, wow, this is wedged between commercial property to the northeast and northwest, and highway to the southeast and southwest. And it's a declining area. It's an area that hasn't had investment. It's an area that's on failing septic tanks. It has an inadequate water supply. I thought that the properties really represented an opportunity for assembly. Is that me? 2 minutes?
That's the 2 minutes.
You can pause for just a minute, Mr. Kraus, if it's acceptable to the rest of the people in the audience. It sounds like what you wanted to find out more about. So I'll extend a few minutes more to Mr. Kraus to finish if it's not objectionable to the rest of the group.
I'll try and talk fast. In any event, I think assemblage is not a dirty word. I think assemblage is what's appropriate when you have individual properties which by themselves lack the merit or have the problems that prevent them from being revitalized individually. I have restored some property, individual properties, award-winning historic preservation. And in the case of the properties that I see there in that wedge at the southeast corner of Ridgely Avenue, I think assemblage makes sense. And that's why I have been purchasing some of those properties for investment and in hopes of future development. I want to clarify because some of the words that were said at the last meeting suggested that I'm pressuring people to sell. I am not pressuring anybody to sell. I have made a few offers. In a few cases, they've been accepted. In a few cases, they've been rejected. And when that happens, I said, thank you very much. Let's stay in touch. I'll be around, but call me if you want to. There's no pressure from me to gentrify this area or move people out of the area or anything of that sort. I'd like to just, I know time is precious. There are a couple things that I'd like to clarify. One of them is that there have been a lot of comments about traffic. My own view is that the traffic on Ridgely Avenue is by comparison with many other roadways, light. I think that the potential commercial area here of less than 10 acres, way less than 10 acres, is not going to impact that. Most of the traffic on Ridgely Avenue is through traffic, West Annapolis to Bestgate Road. One of the advantages of local community commercial space is that it allows people to shop in their neighborhood. And I think that people should consider that a walkable community commercial center would be an advantage to the neighborhood and not just bring more traffic to the neighborhood. I can keep talking for a while.
Yes, I knew you could, and out of respect for everyone that's here, I'm going to ask that you put a wrap on.
Okay, will do.
Is that
And I'll be around afterwards if anybody wants to talk.
Can I ask a question? Is that appropriate or no?
I think it would be okay if you asked.
I was just curious if the crowd is supportive of what we've been talking about here of a village overlay planning, going through that process.
I think that's a great idea. I'm supportive of that.
Great.
Thank you. Who else from the public would like to speak this evening?
Hi, I'm Gordon Rathbar. I'm a resident of Lindemore, which of course is served by Ridgely Avenue. The point that has been made here several times, extensive development, commercial development permits large fractions of impermeable surfaces is already damaging coastal flora, part of the Chesapeake Bay. Runoff is coming from Ridgely Oaks, it's coming from the Weeds Creek Medical Center, runs straight down Acorn into the woods, collects silt and is silting in the coast. That's one of the problems. The other is this is an area that is currently land use designated as low density residential. So the idea that we're going to increase commercial nature of this thing for whatever supposed benefits it brings to it's contrary. Traffic is an arguable point, it's frequently low, occasionally high. Crowd pointed out, people who be most impacted, people are trying to get home from work, but going regular and turning back here to get on the 50. So it's a fraught place where to do commercial development, where the appropriate use that area goes in.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, please do.
My name is Patricia Stewart. I live at 514 Ridgely Avenue, and I've been there for 26 years. I bought into the area because it was low density and there wasn't in the future going to be a lot of commercial development. The property next to me is a Wesley Place, which was 5 acres, 2.5 acres that's been designated for conservation. I am 1,000 feet from the Weeds Creek Bridge, which is a swing bridge. Several times a day, that bridge opens up, it is in the middle of the day, and it backs up past my house. I have to be careful right now when there's no commercial development other than the medical center and the churches that are there, but to increase the traffic there where there is not an opportunity to actually expand the roadway. The houses there are right up, it's a very narrow roadway. There's not even enough room really to put a sidewalk or a biking lane because the houses are so close. When you talk about doing something like the Kentlands or what's over in Parole Center, if you look at those areas, you've got 6 lane highways on either side of those developments. Here you have, it's landlocked, it's waterfront. You don't have the ability to expand to be able to pick up more. And when I say the Weeds Creek Bridge opens several times a day, that's not even taking into account when you have things at the Navy Center or when there's an accident on the the Severn River traffic coming through there. In addition, since churches have been built, if you try to exit out that direction when church is letting out, you're stuck in traffic. If you add a lot of development in that area that he's talking about, a lot more traffic, there's nowhere for it to go. I would be awfully opposed to more commercial development, and I would like that area to remain low density.
We're right at time.
Great, thank you.
Stacia Ressler, I live in Livermore, so I hope everyone is hearing that the people who live there now, we live in this neighborhood, it's our neighborhood. We don't want more traffic and we don't feel that we need more shops, except a fish market or a crab shack. So you've asked us, what do we want? If you want that, we'll help you build it. Annapolis needs one now that Annapolis seafood closed. It is not hard to rejuvenate those properties. They are very sought after. Houses in our neighborhood are older. They're about 70 years old now. Many of them have failing septic fields. And yet they are being bid up $200,000 above the asking price, and people are more than happy to put in the new septic field that are being required. Yes, they need their septic repaired, but lack of septic, water, and sewage is a very good reason not to further develop that area, because where are you going to put a water treatment plant? I hope you're not thinking it's going to be Cove Court, because we would really oppose that. But the runoff from commercial properties is severe. If we look at the red zoning that you put up, you'll see there's a ravine behind the medical centers. We have video, we're happy to share it, showing that the runoff goes straight across Ridgely, straight into our cove. It's silting in the cove, as we pointed out, people who have lived there a long time. My husband was born in our home. The cove used to be 10 feet deep. And now in many places it's between 3 feet and 10 inches. So it is an extreme impact to the environment. We keep telling the SAC, I hope you're hearing us. I know Lily does, but I'm not talking about anybody else. That we do not want our neighborhood to be commercially zoned. We want to keep the character of our neighborhood, and we want to protect our waterways. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else over here that wants to speak?
I'm for Haythorne Way, and I live on Bottom Avenue. From the area. And I'm also a watershed steward. And I think that one of the things that there's not just the code that's affected, but all of Weems Creek has been radically affected by the development that's been occurring in the area. And I've only lived in my house with these big sediments in the creek regularly. And so I think that the issues that I'm most concerned about is the environmental effect, further development, the limited transportation options that are available, and just the quality of life. And if we're going to do anything, we need bike trails and sidewalks. We don't need more.
Thank you. Again.
Hello, everyone. Phil Dales, I'm a land use attorney, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the owners of 3 properties on Bedscape Road. First is 181 through 189, area Truman. That's the Annapolis Corporate Park, right down the road here. 888 Bestgate, is the same owner as the first, then 890 Bestgate. The first Annapolis Corporate Park is zoned C2 currently, and the second are both zoned W1. I'm here tonight just to speak very briefly for those 3 properties, because my firm put in applications for them to have different recommended zones that are currently shown in the region plan maps. Plan 2040 designated all 3 of these for town center land use, and all 3 of these are already developed properties. So these aren't properties that are looking to build anything necessarily, but the town center uses are basically the C3 uses. So where we've got 3 properties that are well served by public infrastructure, and really in a place where, as a matter of policy, the county is encouraging businesses to go and locate in already developed areas where they can be well served by the road, sewer, and water. So switching these 3 properties from their currently recommended zones in the region plan, town center zoning, would really allow for any kind of tenant of the various uses in the C3 use table to locate there. I think that's what we would all want to see happen, because that's not possible in already developed property. That puts pressure on properties that aren't developed where those uses would seek to locate. So again, just 181, 189 Harry S. Truman, 888 Bethgate, and 890 Bethgate. All three of those are recommended for town center land use designation in Plan 2040. And we're hoping that the zoning that's consistent with that, which is town center zoning, is what's recommended for those three properties. So thank you all very much.
Can you repeat those addresses?
Yes, ma'am. 181 to 189 Harry S. Truman. That's the corporate park. 888 Bestgate. And 890 Bestgate.
We're gonna be looking at all of those.
Those are in a
addresses
spreadsheet.
amongst the others that came in for consideration this evening as we go through the rest of the meeting. So just look back here, like how about everybody over here? Is everyone? Everyone still? Great. Over here? No? Great. So, yeah, I'm just gonna remind everyone, if you think of things you want to add after tonight's meeting, please feel free to put them in writing and submit them. Or join us again for the next exciting meeting. Read the seven group and we're happy to listen to your point of view. And I just wanted to talk for one more minute about that. We are listening and we're glad you're here. And you know, we all have different points of view about what's appropriate and what's going to be best, and yours counts. You know, I'm hearing a lot of people have great concerns about, you know, the potential for a change in zoning here that might increase the density or the intensity of the use there, and the concerns about the environment. And so they're hitting home with hearing those. As we consider what we're going to recommend from our group, we're taking all of that into account. So thanks for taking the time and making the effort to be here, and we very much appreciate you doing that. With that, I'm going to close the public comment portion of our meeting tonight and see what's up in the next one. Okay, so old business. Old business starts with the approval of the prior meeting notes. Now, the last meeting notes have not yet been completed. I know staff has been incredibly busy with not just our region, but several others that are in.
Get it done.
And you know, your regular work, right? So, so we'll look at the meeting notes from our prior meeting at the next meeting, and we're just two behind, which isn't so bad. But we did have meeting notes from the meeting prior to our last one that were presented. And we made the decision to set those aside because there were some people who thought they might want to make additional comment from our group about some adjustments to those notes. Is there anyone here this evening who wants to offer any revisions to those notes as they were presented at the last meeting?
I think this was the April 13th meeting. Yeah.
That's right. No? Do I have a
No, there was when I was talking about the Bay Ridge Shopping Center, the giant shopping center, somehow the giant shopping center part dropped off and it just said that I was talking about Bay Ridge. I was really talking about that big shopping center that's on Bay Ridge.
Then in the context of the village center overlay, adjusting that for that area.
Yeah, and just what changes are being made by the city now.
Yeah. Looking for where that appears in the.
Oh, I see it. It's on page, yeah, I see it. This is open, I'll ask that a transit oriented development overlay be looked at for Forest Drive.
What page is that? You may not have yours paginated, but
Page 5.
page 5. Okay, I see it.
And that goes to what we were just talking about, what the city's plans are. And
So how would you like to see that revised? Just to ensure that transit oriented development overlay is reference to the giant shopping center and that commercial area.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna put in parentheses. Giant shopping center and surrounding area.
Is that one of the bullets in here? Is that,
It is.
is it the?
It's the third bullet down on that page.
Where is it? Where is it?
Ask that a transit oriented development.
Overlay we looked at for Forest Drive. In parentheses, I'm adding giant shopping center and the surrounding commercial area because of future development proposed for the corridor
I see.
in
Okay,
order to alleviate congestion.
yeah, understood.
Yeah, for better coordination between the county and the city. Does that sound?
Yep.
Better. Okay, sure. Thank you. All right.
Thanks for taking a look at those, really getting that clarified. So is there a motion to accept the notice, the minutes as adjusted for the discussion?
Second.
Great. Is everyone in, does everyone agree that the changes are acceptable? If anyone doesn't feel that they are? Okay, so we're gonna say that carried through consent this, and accept those into the record. Great, thank you. Other old business, Patrick, Desiree, can we think of anything we want to talk about?
Don't think so at this time.
Okay, great. So, this is the big portion of our meeting this evening where we're going to talk about, the Region 7 comprehensive zoning applications that have been received by the county. And, we talk about, what our recommendations on those are going to be. Is that right, Patrick?
Right.
Okay. Great. So I'll turn it back over to you. You guys can take us through it if that's okay.
Yeah,
Great.
so we sent a large spreadsheet out to you all that encompassed or included all of the information that was downloaded from the applications themselves into the spreadsheet. There were links to any addenda or attachments, thank you, that were included with those applications. So you had that as well. And then you had there were several cells that indicated staff review of the applications and then our recommendation. And we do have some, well, we have some things to talk about as we move through all of that. We had 26 applications presenting changes in the region overall, and they kind of fell into 4 geographic areas. Several were in the Ridgely Avenue area. We had 4 in the Pearl Town Center. We had several in the Maryland 2 area. Most of those were clustered around the South River Bridge. And then there were 4 in the outer peninsula area. So why don't we get started going through those? I hope did everybody have a chance to look through that spreadsheet and see our thought? Okay, well, we'll go through it a bit tonight. So in the Ridgely Avenue area, so each dot on that you see on the map on the screen here represents one zoning change request. And in this case, this is the base map here is the zoning as it was recommended after that we had worked through, and this was put out for public review last month. And so that's the base map that you're looking at here. So we got 8 applications in this area. And each one, we reviewed each application on its own merits and had discussions internally. All of these applications were requesting C2 zoning. So some would be upzoning from SB, some would be upzoning from the existing R2 residential zoning. And there are some non-conforming uses within, or there's at least one non-conforming use within this list. After discussing internally, we really felt like in general, all of these applications, it's a little bit of a jump in terms of the allowances that come with C2 zoning. It's a bit of a jump even from the SP zoning, the number of new uses and the intensity of those uses that could come with that new zoning. And so we are recommending, we didn't feel like the C2 zoning was really quite the right fit for this area. And we felt like it still needs a tailored tool for the Ridgely Avenue area to really determine if there are going to be some additional uses that may be considered appropriate for this area and a different intensity. Some different tools other than what we have in our zoning toolbox at this point would be appropriate. And so we would like to still recommend that we pursue a village sector plan that really looks at this area a little bit more closely with more you're showing those. Okay. That looks at this area more closely with more public input and helps develop some tailored tools that are appropriate for that area. So based on that, and even looking at each of the applications independently, we do recommend holding the zoning as it's shown in the draft map currently.
And could you verify what that is? Can we say what that is?
So the zoning that is represented on the map here is what we would recommend retaining in the draft map that would go forward to the, through the process.
There was no
So the-
legends.
Yeah, so the.
I'm sorry.
the yellow property. And then the red is currently C2 property.
Yeah, the two large red areas, these are existing C2 properties. Now, we have gotten a lot of comments and we just heard one today about the extension of this area, expanding C2 on that property. So I think that's not an application, so we're not going to address that tonight, but that is something that we've gotten a lot of comments on that we will be looking at as staff.
So the recommendation is to keep it as is
Mhm.
from the planning department. And then can we just review process real quick? Is it, do we discuss and then vote, or how does this work?
Yeah, I think we do need we would like to leave here tonight with an SAC recommendation on each of these applications.
So do we want to make a motion to vote on this now, or vote on a recommendation, or do we want to open it up for discussion?
Well, we started with opening it up for discussion, but there are some questions before we get to that I had. I'm sure there might be some others. But the two parcels in question, one of them is the office building with the, we go to the left-hand side. So the C2 parcel that exists today is a singular property.
Pink is the C2.
Mhm.
Right, yeah. So that's Ridgely Oaks building. So, and then across the road is the medical center building, which is, and it's kind of curious that, I'm not sure what spot zoning isn't, but that kind of looks like what it is to me. Isn't that kind of funny? And I'm not sure how that happened because, I know they're big parcels, but it almost seems like the zoning was adjusted for those two to provide for the uses that are there that are somewhat inconsistent with the rest of the neighborhood.
Those, I don't disagree with you. Those were changed to C2 back during the I think 2010 comprehensive rezoning effort.
Right, was it a singular request, do you think, or was it just,
Have to dig into the files.
Yeah, I think the buildings both predate, and so it might have been a correction. Yeah, it was probably a correction to make this uses consistent with the underlying zoning for the property. Okay,
At one time, medical offices were permitted in residential. So that's why they were legal. Crime and then, but that use was taken out, being permitted. Became non-conforming, and so we have to dig to see if it was just a a recommendation from staff to make those conforming or.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you. And then I'm just looking at the aerial map that we started the left side of the screen for further down where the first dot is. Can you tell me what that use is currently? It looks like it's
House. It's on Dubois, up Dubois Road, right? It's 216 A and B, I think. So all those black dots are separate applications. Okay, so there's 8 in that section.
Mhm. Yeah, and this came in as an application during Plan 2040 for a change in planned land use. And at that time, we did not recommend, and the plan was not adopted with a change in planned land use. So the land use remained low density residential. There was a note that the site access by a narrow right of way really, that was mentioned in the justification for maintaining the residential use or planned land use.
So I have five of them. Yeah, sure. I guess this is our discussion, kind of with the question. Yeah.
So were you calling it?
I'll call on you.
So, I feel a little like we're backpedaling. Because last meeting, we decided that we would give this to the community and do the village center sector plan process. And that's the recommendation from your department on each one of these 8. And it seems like that just makes the most sense. You know, we already said we're gonna do that. Now these zoning requests come in, that would be part of that process to do it. So am I missing something?
I was just second Phil's comments. Last meeting, we decided to go with the village overlay process. Planning department is recommending going with the village overlay process. Let's make with recommendations and move on.
Yeah, so I think their recommendation is that no changes are made until a village overlay is developed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So we're voting on whether to agree with that or not. So it
Yeah.
would be a denial of these application stuff.
Exactly.
And I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with exactly what the OPC recommendation is, which is exactly that. We just leave it as is.
That's what we said last meeting.
We give it to the community to decide what they want to do.
So I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that's probably, but I just wanted to have enough information because what I'm looking at here, with those parcels doesn't look like it's residential use there. So I just want to make sure I understand it.
Okay.
Because I'm not ready to vote unless I do.
Okay, well,
So
the point is, so it doesn't matter what they're zoned for. We decided at the last meeting that the village overlay center was, or the village overlay was the way we were going to go because we decided that the community voice was important.
yeah, I agree 100%. I just want to know what is that used for? The question is,
And it's used for residential.
it doesn't look like it from what I'm looking at. So that's why.
What does it look like to you, Leo?
It looks like it's a commercial structure there, but I'm just trying to make sure I'm looking at the right one.
There is one that's mixed use, and I'm not sure if it's the.
Which number is
the one-
on the spreadsheet that you?
I could,
04 DRA 04 is the
Current use is single family.
Somebody's running a business out of their house.
I'd probably be fine, but. Yeah, what happens there?
For not for the, that's 6 apartments.
6 apartments and an HVAC. Okay, thank you. So, okay, so I got that. Okay,
This is the.
Low income housing.
yeah, okay, gotcha, thank you. And then that whole strip, there's questions for everyone asking that, and then the one on the corner. It's hard because the parcels don't line up with the building and the paving, so it was just part of the problem. And then the one on the corner is zoned,
R2.
that's the R2, and that does have a house.
Yes.
Okay, Great. Thanks for indulging me. I just wanted to
On the
understand.
corner, this is a vacant property here.
Yes.
There's a house back here.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I have a question. Scenario. I heard someone say that years ago, they had, the area was at least 10 feet now anywhere from back here, 3 feet to 10 inches.
That's what I
Because
heard.
of silt.
Yes.
Who made that comment?
Depending on the waterway,
Okay,
but we're dredging it to keep it so that it's navigable for both. We're paying for the dredge.
we said we needed.
The county gives us a hard time about the dredging.
I better get quiet. No, I'm saying that because I hear the concerns of the community. I'm part of the community. I'm a different part of Annapolis, but I always hear contractors come in promising things. And then when they leave, you can call them back to fix the roads that they would take care of. You can call them back to the problem you have now, but that was then, and it's here, and it's here. And then you have 3 feet to 10 inches. Who's paying attention to that? Who's gonna take care of that? Now, I know I'm on this community, on this committee, helping to represent, for the region for region 7 for 2040. Do you feel that your comments are being addressed? And your concerns are being addressed? I'm saying that, I'm throwing it out there. I hear you. I'm not looking at you, but I could, peripheral vision got you covered. I think you hear you going. So my whole point is, with through this effort, I'm talking to Leo, I'm talking to, Patrick. Outside of what our responsibility is, who can answer, who's gonna take care of the problem that exists? I hear saying the community is doing it because the county hasn't addressed it. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed. Now, keep in mind, I see, and I think your thought, okay? But also understand something. Your concern, don't let it stop here and blame us for what's not being done. Okay? That's why I said the last meeting, I think a couple of meetings before that. You have a voice that you need to take all the way to the city council and make sure that your council representative is hearing this. Okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry?
County. Not city council.
I know, I live here. Yes, okay,
Yes.
but what I'm saying is, you're a representative for a reason, you have a voice, okay? And so if someone has to address that, who's gonna do it? I'm speaking this way because I was on the school board. And my God, the things that you have to, you're looking at the same time you don't see it. So my question is to all of us, who is going to take these notes to make sure the county is understanding these folks are paying for their own concerns? Who's going to really take care of that concern? It couldn't be them.
Well, Tony, I
Well,
appreciate.
I didn't mean for you to answer it.
Okay,
I said scenario. That's in
it's not like a question.
No, it's out there. But you have to understand what this gentleman's concerns are. Understand what you do professionally. And I was a former fire inspector and fire marshal, whatever. But I see it's always someone left out. Always someone left out. And if we don't speak to that, the elephant stays in the room. Okay? I'm not asking anybody to answer the question tonight. I'm saying there was a scenario. But we have to, if we say it, perhaps we'll start thinking in a different direction. Now you're gonna blow.
That's the thing.
That's right.
It's to think outside the
Yes,
box.
yes. Well, it's time to stop thinking outside the box. It's time to get outside the box. And react, okay? Okay.
So,
So I'm putting a proposal on the table that we accept the recommendation of the OPC.
I haven't closed discussion.
Yeah.
Don't I have to do that? Well,
You can discuss it. When you're discussing the proposal.
you sorry, I interrupted. Didn't get by.
I'm proposing that we accept the recommendation on these 8 properties.
I agree with that proposal.
Second.
Okay, so that sounds like you're proposing that we vote on it.
Yeah, well, there's a consensus, right? But you can still, unless the proposal is on the table, then it's perfectly acceptable to discuss.
So the challenge for me, and first off, I think this is where we're gonna end up, so we're clear. But I understand, if someone has a use on their property that's inconsistent with their underlying zoning. And so it limits what they can do to that property, because of the disconnect, right? We all know those. And so we also all know that the wheels of change are incredibly slow when it comes to zoning change. And I'm not sure when we're gonna do this study, like, we'll recommend it. Let's assume for a moment that county council decides that we're, on target to do that, and then they'll say, great, we're gonna fund that at some point, behind all the other emergencies. So keep in mind, when you decide and I think the village idea is the right one, but you put essentially a fault on anyone getting remedy for problems that they have. For, I'm going to say probably 5 years, and it could be longer. It would be a miracle if it's less, in my estimation. So that's why I'm reluctant to say, look, the easy answer is say, we're gonna table all of this, but the fear I have is like, well, what about the woman who wants to look at her zoning?
So can I just get clarification on what you're saying?
Yes.
I think what I hear you saying is that there are maybe 1 or 2 of these properties that are currently in use in a way that they're not zoned. And that the remedy would be to zone them the way they're in use.
It may
Is that what
be,
you're saying?
it may be, I just want
Okay,
to have people think
so
about
which
it.
are those properties?
Well, the woman who just spoke pointed to hers and said she's using it as a HVAC contracting business in conjunction with some low income housing, which I don't think is designated low income, but I think it's low income by
Okay,
default.
and it's currently zoned as residential.
R2.
Okay,
that's
so
just-
I don't disagree. I think that's a good starting point. I think that's a good point. That if something is already a business and it's been a business for a while, it's not just that they stuck it in there a month ago.
It's a non-conforming, so
Mhm.
they're not supposed to be operating. But they started their business knowing that it was a residential zoning. They started a commercial business knowing it was zoned as residential.
We don't know when these things happen.
Okay.
We don't know, like that business could have been a business there for a long time.
No, I'd be
Can we-
happy.
We can let our zoning director address the non-conforming issue.
So process the registered non-conforming use. You could start it when they were allowed. And the administrative. Evidence when it started, it's been used. The tenure, the document that gives us 10 years of continuous use. For the last 10 years, we can presume it back to whatever date it was needed to start, unless we can find evidence to the contrary, but we budget. We don't, we don't, not the performance, we can continue to use. We would like to expand it to federal custom under 30%, maybe greater expansion, and for the variance to the 30%. It's transferable. Someone else that needs it, as long as they keep 12%.
So no matter what we decide today on these 8 properties, we could still say we're going to take the OPC recommendation. The owner of a particular property could still come to you and say, look at this is zone residential, but I've had a business here for 10 years and you can switch it without any of.
So it needs to really start at the time when the zoning for the code allowed that use. That's similar to the office building that we talked about the C2.
Right.
They were allowed in the zoning code in residential, and when that came out of the code, they became non-conforming because it was started when it was allowed. There's no longer using the changing code or changing zone. They can come in and register. But if we found it started at a time when it wasn't allowed, we won't register. We can rebut in 10 years. So 10 years of evidence, we can reduce the rebuttable presumption. So the county at that point, look at aerial, and do its due diligence to see, having proof that it didn't start when the date was. We've thrown that on.
Did you do that for the property we're talking about?
Which property?
627 is registered non-conforming, so they can continue
They
to operate.
Operate as long as they don't get any
Stand up
fee for 12 consecutive months. There was a recent bill last year that allowed, if it was damaged or like destroyed on that, taxes, that you had 20 years. to register. Like, just,
Right.
and then there's another process that we're not crazy about, that we really don't like to talk about, but it's called the 20-year registry use. It's a use that started when it was not allowed, and permitted conditional establishment. Someone did it, when the zoning didn't allow it. They've done it for 20 years, and they didn't get a zoning compliance complaint. They can register that. They can't transfer it except for to a child. It's not transferable, and that one will eventually in, but it's not conforming, it's not transferable. So that's entirely questions by that, so if you have a property that's not zoned for use, there's two options, they can use, there's a non-conforming use, if they have for 20 years.
So, thank you. It's really very helpful. So I think what I'm hearing is that because it's a registered non-conforming use, there's some latitude in expanding our property to continue the use that's in place today. But it's not the same as an underlying change that we're going to.
That's right, it's going to be by special section, we can follow public hearing,
Public hearing.
notice to people within 300 feet, right on the property, that was aware of it, and then there's a public hearing to expand it.
Limited to 35%.
Limited to 30%, but if you need greater expansion, you can ask for a variance to the 30% to expand it greater. Turn off your tag allowed, you know, expand it small.
Great, thank you. So, thanks for the indulgence. I'm done with my questions.
You comfortable?
Well, no, I mean, I'm waiting to hear what everybody else has.
Well, hold on a second. We're discussing something we haven't said first and second. Usually it's first, second. On the question.
None of it's consent.
Well,
I don't need a motion.
let me finish talking. I'm trying to get this clear myself for myself. Because if we're doing this, just to get this clear for ourselves, okay, fine. But I just want to make sure we're clear on how the process works. And we're going to vote on. You first, you second, and you discuss. We're discussing right now just for clarification for ourselves, right? Not part of the motion. Is that clear?
I don't think there's a motion.
I thought you were saying you wanted the motion.
I mean, if we're using consensus, it's not a motion, it's a proposal.
I heard you were motion. Okay, great. All right.
If we're using parliamentary procedure, you want a motion.
Yes.
And I thought we were making decisions by consensus, but
As far as we can, that's what we're doing. We're going to continue to do.
so a proposal,
Yours is appropriate.
Okay, I have no problem with that. I just want to make sure whatever we say and do, that we are consistent.
So the
Okay.
proposal is still out there that we accept the recommendations from planning and zoning staff to delay changes to the zoning as requested by the applicant until such time as the village study has been completed. Who's in agreement with that? Who thinks, let's go around the room, does everyone feel like that's an appropriate recommendation for us to adopt? Okay.
But I do have a question about the village outline.
Sure.
Because Patrick, you and I talked about the fact that the village center included wetlands and whether that was appropriate to have in the village.
We've got a lot of comments that the area that was drafted as outlined probably needs to be tightened up a bit.
Okay.
I don't have
But that will happen before the community has
yeah, what I would like to do is take another stab at that and bring that to you all with the preliminary draft.
All right, so that helps me in this discussion.
That came up, Linda, when I talked to Patrick earlier today, because we don't want it to look like it's gerrymandered, it kind of looks like it's an artificial outline. It should be something a little more normalized, I think. So I think, yeah, that's something we haven't decided on what the limits of that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that
But it's
that
open.
wasn't a done deal. Because
No,
I did
it's
have
not.
concerns, including the wetlands in that area, because especially since that goes into public park and needs to be managed.
Well, it's I think it's a really good question. Maybe we should finish this and then come back.
Yeah, no, okay, but I just wanted clarity that it was still the map in motion.
Yeah,
And that it
yes, the
hadn't
answer is
been-
yes.
Yes, okay, I'm good.
The parameters of that, piece of that, okay.
I do want to clarify, too, there were actually 9 applications along Ridgely Avenue. There was one additional on the south side of US 50, but
Yeah.
the same recommendation is to retain the R2.
And I don't think that was in our area. That was drawn, but we could expand it. So, it seems to me like we have consensus on following the recommendation. planning and zoning for the 9 parcels that we're looking at right now. So with that, I think that's what we're going. Great. Everyone good with that? Thank you. Let's move to the next one.
Okay, Parole Town Center, there were 4 applications within the Parole Town Center. And yeah, so two of them are on the north side of Best Gate. Going off of memory here, I think it's 888 Best Gate and it was,
About 890.
And 890?
890.
I'm sorry, what,
890.
this is where Private Cycle live, if you drive by, it used to be Baltimore.
888 and 890.
Okay. Yeah, so these are office buildings currently, currently W1, do I have that correct? And they've requested town center zoning for those. That's consistent with the policy area. This is within the Parole Town Center. All of the overlay provisions, there's a zoning overlay that applies to the full Parole Town Center. So these fall within that. And I'll go ahead and point out the other 2, if I may, if you'll scroll down to kind of where we are now.
So this is the 3 that Phil was just talking.
He submitted 3 and then there was 1 additional that,
This is like right behind us.
one was these buildings that were all just built immediately behind us, this office park. So that's the 3rd one that he had submitted an application for. Those are currently C2 and the request is for town center zoning there. Our recommendation is to accept that, except for what Desiree is indicating here, maintaining open space zoning on that reserved parcel there. And then this one is a little bit strange. The current zoning for this is kind of across the street behind Grano and the Indian restaurant that I'm drawing a blank on the name, but it's so currently the current zoning line actually kind of splits this building in 2 and the BB&T bank as well. So the current on the ground adopted zoning. Sure. Yeah. So you can see how it sort of splits that area now. So we had cleaned it up by bringing all of the C2 to the property line here. The request is to pull that line back here to allow for, there's some tenants in here that need that W1 zoning to not be non-conforming, and it sort of opens up flexibility that they want for future tenants as well in this space. So we are recommending drawing a line through this parcel to make this portion of the site and the attendant parking for this, and also the bank property W1.
Is that daycare on the end there? There's a Goddard daycare
Yes.
center? Okay, and then the rest of it's a warehouse?
Yeah,
Okay.
right. So I don't know, there's much more to say about that. Again, it is within the Parole Town Center, the overlay allowances and requirements and restrictions still apply. So it is very flexible as it is, but it's for tenant reasons that they would like to retain.
So you said you're splitting the parcel, so that is all under one ownership?
It is. And typically we don't like those split parcels.
I cannot remember what's included in town center zoning. Does that mean they could add housing there? Or was-
Yeah, would start.
Pretty much C3 uses are allowed in the town center. C3 allows multifamily with a 50% component.
And then layer on top of that, there's a whole set of overlay provisions that allow R22 uses within the Parole Town Center, mix of uses, those kinds of things. So,
Like for 888 Bedgate.
Mhm.
Does that mean they could potentially convert a floor of the offices into housing?
yes,
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, but I do want to make clear that it's how does that work when you say you can do this, but you can't develop open space? Like, do you guys, do you draw the boundary lines or how does that work?
So that again,
So that
this
one parcel that had open space next to it. You were saying that they were making their request and you were supporting it, except they were not going to be allowed to develop that open space that they own. Is that correct?
yeah, so our recommendation is, we recommend town center for those parcels, we call those out, and then we note specifically the open space parcel remains
Okay.
less in our recommendation.
So it doesn't get lumped in with the whole parcel, the pieces that are designated open space remain so with the recommendation.
Okay. Wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
For 888 and 890, would they be allowed some point additional density, or are they just gonna be able to theoretically have more flexibility to use it with the?
I think it's more flexibility, yeah, the Pearl Town Center already gets the maximum density allowances in the county.
And they're in that overlay, ready.
Yeah.
And our group recommended 75% of all new residential housing goes within the Pearl Town Center, right? Wasn't that what we agreed to? So to stay consistent with our own
That's where you.
previous recommendation,
With road.
would make sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
so can we go back to that warehouse conversation though? So they're the one with the split down the middle. So they're recommending, or I'm sorry, I'm just getting confused between the parcels. So that one they were asking to be zoned for town center zoning, or they were asking to,
They were asking for W one zoning.
well, and you guys are okay with that?
Yeah, so the existing zoning, but she's turned on the current zoning.
Yeah.
This is the preliminary draft.
Oh, it is the preliminary draft, okay. We came into this process essentially not looking to change the of individual properties that for various reasons, we were recommending a change, but for the most part, the underlying zoning. We did have a early initial discussion. Do we want to propose rezoning all of the town center to town center zoning? And I think there are a lot of potential unintended consequences with that, and it seemed
Such as,
potentially. It's, I don't know how to describe it, kind of it's almost a house of cards in a way. There are a lot of existing uses that have come in under these layers of regulation as they are now. We felt like it was better to leave that in place and through this application process, let people make the case to change the zoning within the Pearl Town Center if they need to. And so, these are the four that we've gotten.
So again, I just want to remind the group that we, as a group, just agreed that 75% of new housing should be contained within the Pearl Town Center. And by zoning this W1, we're eliminating that much space for residential use at some point, if the flexibility for residential space on the line. So like, I've been pretty consistent with keeping things the way the community wants outside the Pearl Town Center, but as a group, we decided within that town center that we should be trying to make it as residential friendly as possible. So I respect your viewpoint. I'm just not there yet. That's the compelling argument why it should remain W1.
They will still be able to develop residentially.
Okay, under W1.
Under the parole overlay provision.
Okay, so they can stay W1 and have it.
And if they choose to knock down the building at some point and redo it, residential could be on the table.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. I'm there. I get it now. Okay.
okay, then we'll put a proposal on the table. Do we accept the OPZ recommendation on the 4 requests in the parole website?
How does everybody feel about that? We're in agreement that that's appropriate. Great, so that carries with unanimous consent. Let's move to the next.
Okay. This one we may need to discuss in groupings. And the first one, we did not have a formulated opinion yet. We do now. We had a meeting with
This is, you're going to read to.
yes,
Yes.
on Route 2. So there's a lot going on with this one, and I need my cheat sheet to get into this. So there were the first one, GRA-14 covers multiple properties in this area. And part of the confusion, so it covers these properties here. Have y'all driven this way, and there's a historical church?
Wait a minute, orient me a little more.
Yeah.
Help me get right.
Want me to map it?
Before going up the bridge.
Okay.
Well,
This is South River Bridge.
Right.
South River
right.
Bridge.
With the yellow.
Yellow
Point the yellow.
Well, so that's a separate application.
Yeah, I know, but they're not getting into that. That'll just tell you where it is.
Is it on the left side and?
If you're driving south, it's on the
It's on the
right,
right side.
but we'll talk about the left side too. We're talking about all of it.
That's good.
Yeah, so we're talking about the left-hand side there. So there's the historic church, and then the properties to the right of that. And then all of these.
Really?
Left, going active.
We're going south,
Or
right?
no.
So there's some down this street here.
The street view is actually very recent, so this.
Oh, wait, that's not. So there's some down this street and then over on this side as well. For the first-
That one's way down, right? Desiree, that's on the water.
There's a few down there. So I guess we'll stick to this area here first. So this, because that was one application, this.
And part of the confusion in this area, there are some parcel data errors that need to be corrected, and we've got that, we've got the information that we need for that to be done. Ideally, we want our zoning to match property lines, so I think we can talk about that, in a constructive way. So this is a separate application here. This person, for this property had, in their application, had requested C4. This larger area here, the request really has been for C2 zoning. This is an existing parcel of well, the front part of it is existing C4, which we had maintained in our draft map. So the request on the table now is for these parcels to become C2, and then for these to be, what's that, MD or MC zoning, which is commercial marina zoning. And there is a parcel line that actually splits this. So there are two owners, separate owners here, and this is not an area that is in has put in a zoning change request.
That's not a commercial marina currently?
It is.
Okay, but in the request blue is commercial marina. We had actually already recommended C2, so this, you're looking at the preliminary draft zoning here. If I turn on the adopted zoning, it was previously residential here, but Plan 2040 recommended commercial for those properties on Sunset Drive.
Land use.
Right, so as part of, making that consistent with the plan land use, we recommended changing those to C2 already. So those on Sunset Drive were already recommended for C2, but that was part of the bigger application first.
They have a significant amount of impervious surface, do they not already?
Yeah, but the current zoning, this is some of our heaviest marina zoning.
Are there any public comments objecting to that zoning?
Yeah, let's pull it up, and I don't think we didn't get a lot of comments in this area at all.
Where are they trying to put that resort?
It's on the other side.
That's on the other side. We'll talk about that.
So there were no public comments about the zoning on that side.
If you want to zoom out a little bit, Desiree, and maybe we can move on and kind of talk about several of these in conjunction with one another. So the same applicant has, requested,
And see,
zoning on this parcel, so that represents an intensification there. Requesting C4 zoning for this, which is, a retail boat sale, and then Yellowfin, has requested C4 zoning on that parcel. This is an area where there are several parcel line inconsistencies or errors that need to be corrected, and we understand, you know, what that's supposed to be now, but the long and the short of it is, the Yellowfin property has requested C4 zoning. This retail boat establishment here has requested C4. This has requested C. And our recommendation then is to go with, to support the C2 zoning as requested for these properties, including the historic here, to maintain the MB zoning in this, on these parcels back here. No change here, no, well, that's not an application. We're recommending retaining the zoning as it exists here. And then support the C4 zoning here and then deal with them as well.
so Patrick, Yellowfin has commercial docks, so they don't have to be considered marine.
So that's part of the parcel issue that we're seeing. This property actually, the waterfront between Yellowfin and the docks is a part of this problem.
Oh, it's one of those.
So that would correct that. And thank you for asking.
Did you talk about the recommendations for the other side? I'm sorry if you did, I didn't.
You want to hear all of it at once?
No, so the reason I was asking is, so you're saying, C4, is that right, for along the avenue to the bridge? On this side, right,
C4.
and then what's on the other side where the dots are?
So those are two requests for C4 as well.
Okay, because the colors are a little confusing, it's like, is it or is it going to be?
For
Right,
red, or the bright pink is before the red is.
Existing C4.
okay, so they want to be C4 and the other two are C4.
These want to be C4 as well.
And then Yellowfin and the adjacent parcel. And your recommendation is the same for all those, that's.
Yeah, we would support C4 here. And then
Just a note about the non-conforming use on that one. Registered non-conforming use. Currently, it's like an auto maintenance shop,
Right,
so it's
okay.
already operating really at a.
Is the self-store at the other one, is that?
Where's the self-storage? Yeah, that's before you.
oh, that's further.
Okay, I'm
That's not the area.
just trying to make sure.
This-
And then the
this
other
is
side of that red thing there is all C2 still, and they have not asked for change, right? Where
Right.
that arrow is right there.
Those do not come in.
Yeah.
As an application. But yeah, it is under the same owner, as this Liberty Marina area. They've requested, extending well, it's currently split here and they're requesting all, MC zoning. Extending that here. And our recommendation is then to support that.
Yeah.
Just to support it.
Mhm.
I just was trying to make sure I understood correctly that the recommendation is to support essentially all of it, with the exception of the piece at the top you spoke about.
It was my understanding too, that the environmental impact, it's already developed property, so upzoning it essentially wouldn't be having a negative impact on the environment necessarily. Is that correct? I mean, it's already developed space, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Would it improve it?
Yeah, hopefully it would.
Would it improve it in terms of
Yeah.
capturing and some mitigating?
And that's what my understanding as well.
If it was redeveloped, then yeah, it would trigger more modern stormwater.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, and I have a question about the historic church, so you're giving that to C2? Is there?
That was our
I'm curious,
recommendation after conversations with the
With,
cultural resources.
that's what I wondered, is there any order on that, or that, you know?
It's not on the county inventory.
Mhm.
They did ask that if, it would need to be documented if it were to come in as part of a development or redevelopment.
If they were gonna take it down or do whatever, you'd still have a handle to drive it and.
Yeah. They said that, yeah, they would.
Not
have
just ripping down.
opportunity to request that.
Is that with Mrs. Cox's office that you guys talked to? Is it in Cox? And were there, was there any archaeological investigation on that site? Is that there?
I'm not aware, they didn't
Did
mention
she say anything about
They
that?
just came out.
Okay.
Get it in writing.
But if they choose to develop or put in a building permit, they would have to do the archaeological review at that point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when they could, request. So,
Again, were there any comments from the?
I don't think we got any on the,
Right.
And review them.
So they weren't on the map and.
Yeah, because we had the public comment period open at the same time.
So they're coming in as part of this comment period with requests.
yeah, so the timing, yeah, you bring up a good point. So the timing was, we had put together our draft, zoning map.
Right.
And then the intent was to have the public review and make comments, but then applicants would also, if they want a change from what we were suggesting, they would apply.
Okay,
And that was, so that's what you're seeing here.
so this will come out in the next draft and there'll be
Yes.
another comment period where
That's where
people could
on
comment
some
on
application.
this next revised map. Got it.
So, yeah, I haven't had a time a chance yet to draft our recommendation on that first larger area that, we had, if you can. But I think so in general, though, I think our recommendation is, C2 for these properties, for all of that one, and these here. Maintain this as is, and then C4.
Do you know how much impervious surface they have now?
Don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting because, MC is heavy commercial and C4 is highway commercial and it's right on the water. So,
It is our heaviest.
yeah,
Mm,
I guess the justification would be they've already paved everything
Since it's
over.
there, maybe if you get theoretically.
When it's redeveloped.
Facilitate redevelopment and fewer stormwater regulations.
So if this eventually does get, and they come in for an application to build on it, they'll need to go through APF.
Yes.
Okay, and is what we know is that, it's just, will APF support that? Do we know, especially I'm just thinking traffic.
I don't think I think it's on septic.
It's on.
I know yellow. It's a planned service area.
So that's part of the capital, I'm assuming it's, I don't know, some capital improvement plan.
The applicant would need to pay for those extensions, yeah.
But I think the short answer is, yeah, it is subject to APF for the redevelopment there. And there is not sewer on at least one part there, but I don't know which other ones don't. I know that Yellowfin does it, but I'm not sure about the other side where Liberty is. I'd be surprised if it was there.
All the plans sewer,
It's all planned service area, but planned service area could be, who knows how long.
not existing, doesn't, yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, right, that's what it tells us. And then,
That's different than the traffic, yeah.
another,
It's
just one of
just
the seven can
different.
pass.
There's
Yeah.
another evaluation of traffic.
Right,
Right, I think there's 7 for APF. There's pool.
Right, yeah.
I was just looking for a hotel under this, MC zoning here. Is that in there?
Do whatever you want.
I can let-
There's hotels here. It does like anybody. C4. No, but the
For Liberty Marine.
parcel for Liberty, that was gonna go to
MC.
MC. Is it in there?
No,
MC, is hotel permitted use in MC that?
and other.
I heard what's hospital use.
What's the maritime?
Zoning.
In MC zoning, hotels were special specialties that the accessory to a marina. We look at the specific requirements, I guess everyone knows how to use. Special exception for Liberty, wanting it done.
Great. Okay, so it's a special exception use is how the hotel
It's
would
a special exception used in the MC and MD districts only for marina.
and it's a permitted use in the C4, is that right?
C2 is permitted, if they do plan to put a hotel on the C2 across from the river.
Yes.
Second hotel. Small boutique hotel on Liberty. Large hotel on the C2.
Large banquet hall, all
It
permitted.
was all restaurant, 3 rooms, 2 swimming pools.
Did the staff,
They're gonna redo everything, lots of green, get rid of the pervious pavers, get rid of a lot of the. Then they're putting in a pumping station.
as part of the, did staff recommend approval of the application?
They meet all the requirements, they're not asking for variance. But they want to variance to the road access. Old South River Road is a local, owned by a state highway. They said it's really act as a collector and they want to redesignate it, but they need a variance, but it doesn't meet the requirements of special exception. And they also need a variance for setback. Hotel, height of it's 4 stories over and the portion of the property. Supposed to be the height, I can't remember, 65 feet maybe, but it's very low down compared to the bridge. And they have to include setbacks 2 feet for every 1 foot of height over 40 feet. So they're gonna need a variance for the setback.
So they're putting in a pumping station, but it's this sewer.
That will. That will bring in the pumping station, but.
That was my question, and they have to connect it there, that's not.
I don't have this. That's not my. But I can just tell you what they're planning to do, what they're planning.
You know, how large is the area that the pumping station would accomplish?
We did one other application impacting properties to the north. If we can. So, right there. There was one application for these 2 properties on Route 2 as well. Both of them have single family homes. They're zoned R1 and the request was for R10 zoning. And we are not recommending that.
Well, can we finish with the other ones first though? It seems like we're jumping ahead, or am I misunderstanding?
I had to consider it all part of that Route 2 corridor. So I just wanted to, before I forget.
Oh, I see. So you're saying there's an application further.
So back to all the traffic, because we're adding a hotel and a restaurant in back of that marina. And they're gonna use that little access road. So a lot of people come out of Yellowfin and come down around and go back. So are they asking to widen it, or? I guess that all comes when they develop.
I mean, yeah, that's a development review process.
That is county access. That.
Little,
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I guess.
So-
The special exception is the first step. They still have to go through all the development. There will be. Yeah. About that.
So, look, we've got a lot of ground to cover. We could spend another hour on this particular area. It sounds like, there are recommendations provided through, planning and zoning that seem appropriate to me, the proposal. might be that, we accept the recommendation that's provided by planning and zoning.
And it does go through another round of
I
public.
just did it.
Yeah.
I don't know when they're gonna get me.
I'll make that.
There you go.
And I agree with it. Yeah, do we want to, everybody okay with that?
So let the record show Catherine made.
Yes.
Is there any, I know, you already did. Talk it. That's- Does anyone have an objection to moving forward that way? Great, so the motion carries, with unanimous consent, and we can move on.
Okay.
Oh,
Now, wait, a minute, did that include the other two polka
It
dots?
did,
that you-
yes. Yes, well, because they recommended not to.
Yeah,
one
but
up
I was
here.
trying to
Oh, I'm sorry.
understand, I was trying to understand why they wanted to change it. Are they planning to put in some kind of a something,
Well, let's answer those questions.
The requests,
mobile home park or? Where's one in for? They want to go from R1 to R10?
yeah, it was quite a jump. The application just indicated the requested zoning change is consistent with the Plan 2040 development policy area and planned land use, which it's not honestly. Consistent with existing residential uses and the surrounding area, single family homes and townhomes. I don't feel like it is consistent with that. We're talking about the R10 request. Yeah.
Because it doesn't look like a huge jump when you look at the difference between an R1 and an R10, but that's what I'm trying to better understand it.
It's more or less allowing 10 units per acre versus 1 unit per acre.
Basically going to townhomes.
From 1 house to 10.
So I was going to ask you the size of the parcel. It's, you're saying it's an acre?
It's bigger.
And isn't that something we've talked about, is it would be great if we could do more of that?
I think I don't feel like this is an appropriate area for that intensity. I think it would be, it's a single family area. I think that would be better closer into, if we were talking about on Escape Road, perhaps, or certainly within the town center. But
Desiree, can you put up the aerial, the Google map of that?
Yeah. I'm trying to find the acreage real quick.
I mean, they might want to just do a duplex, that's not allowed under an law. Right? They could go from a,
but I would push back I would push back a little bit because upzoning to R10, I mean, if a person, an applicant says, I want to do, this thing, and we rezone to R10, you're opening it up to the whole basket of potential uses and intensities. And there's nothing to constrain it to that one person's vision. I think this is why I'm gonna, not to get back on Ridgely again, but I feel like that is why the Ridgely Avenue area needs something that is a little bit more tailored, a tailored vision, because it's a different tool than what we have in our toolbox now to potentially apply that.
I'm reading, they could have a mobile home park on an R1. Versus a duplex in an R10.
Acres.
I mean, I'm just,
The same.
I just happen to be a big advocate for if you can, if it's at all appropriate to have more than one house on a lot. If I mean, I need to see the picture.
Right, I hear what you're saying, Priscilla, but, and you guys are saying maybe the infrastructure's not there to support,
But they could have a mobile home park.
They have to have at least 10 acres of the
To have a mobile home park.
Yeah,
On an
10
R1.
acres, public section, public hearing, hearing officer. That to be served by public water and sewer, or scheduled for sewer service within 10 years.
When they're not as limited on an R10.
All in any mobile home.
Okay, so
Use residential districts, but they all have to meet 10 acres. How large is it?
2 acres.
Yeah, two acres. Smaller.
No mobile home park.
No mobile.
Three and a half
Which is
acres. You know, and here is where, I mean, that you all, the SAC could recommend something different than what we're recommending. And one thing you may consider is, you know, do we want to go R2 in that area potentially? Again, I think there's there's this property here that has not submitted an application. It's just these two as well.
Report again.
And what are those neighboring?
These two are, the subject of the application.
And they have a home or they have a mobile?
Yeah, no,
Oh.
there's an existing single family home on. And then this is Humport Farm. Here, which is R2.
They didn't tell us what they wanted.
Want the zoning change, they didn't tell us what they're gonna use it
They
for.
didn't say why.
And Church of Rome is just such, there's just nothing there to support additional homes. That's just. I'm all for a higher density.
But they're very big properties. If they're 2 acre properties, I mean, they could have, 2 or 3 houses on.
They're also in the future sewer service area, which means they would need an amendment to be brought into the plant to serve it with sewer, so. From a utility perspective, I mean. A major subdivision, which is over 5 lots, would. Require PAD approval, it's not, we wouldn't. Recommend basically large subdivisions in an area that's not served by.
Well, this isn't currently planned to have upgrade.
Correct.
Okay.
And it would be, that's a direct output onto Route 2, so that there would be no alternative access. It would be just another choke point.
Well, unless they could figure out a way to connect to the theater to the north there. Some of the park, maybe.
I don't even see a road.
That's a plan, that's a subdivision.
Yeah.
What do you mean, which one do you mean?
Yeah, the one you just pointed.
Well, it's
Oh, there's a road there. Okay. I mean, I would prefer to know what they want it for. I mean, they're making a request and rather than just say no, it's kind of it'd be interesting to know what their thought is.
I don't think these applications come in with an intended use. I think that's part of it.
They don't have to tell you the development, that's the next step.
Yeah,
I
but we
guess.
can deny. So, I mean,
yeah, we're going to just recommend it, and we're backing the planning on it.
Don't promote it there. Sorry.
See something.
Well, I mean, to your point, though, we were looking for opportunities for low density or, the missing middle, and that could be a missing middle site potentially. So, I mean, I'm reluctant to say you can't change it because it is a big part, like it's an opportunity.
exactly what I'm saying.
Well, could you ask them to reconsider instead of the major jump from R1 to R10, possibly go R2 or R5?
But we can make that, you all can make that recommendation.
I mean, that's another
Yeah.
alternative.
And one thing about,
You're not recommending that, could you review this for us?
well, what I was gonna say was, a point of process here, if OPZ had, when we send all of this to the council in the draft plan as it goes forward, we're gonna show the OPZ recommendation, the SAC recommendation, and then they're gonna have that information, and if those are different, that's fine. You don't have to agree with us.
No. I mean, the differences other than the density are limited, these residential zones are, you look across the special exception for so many of them, permitted for so many, just read right across. It's not a dramatic difference in what the,
What the uses are in an R10, is that?
for the things that I can see that aren't residential.
Yeah, the list here, I mean,
But that whole corridor from once you get away from the water is single family properties, and so I
And we,
think R10 would be inappropriate there.
and we've got strategies that recommend, consistency with surrounding neighborhoods and it's neighborhood reservation area, and we're talking about build.
I understand, I'm just.
Well, were there any community comments on this?
It has.
We will be mapping all of these applications and our recommendations in the next iteration. The preliminary plan.
And then how long is it 5 weeks or a month that the public has a chance to look at it? 45 days.
We already agreed by consensus that we were okay with it, right?
Supporting what.
Yeah, we were there. We're just wondering if the discussion.
Yeah.
No, we were.
I didn't know we were including those
He
two.
wasn't there.
I thought we were just looking at all the marina stuff.
No, I understand. You want to-
On these other two, I would like to not agree, but you can all agree. I just think it's an opportunity to go for a higher density if it's appropriate. I just don't know enough to fully support denying them.
How does everybody else?
I mean, my thoughts are because I don't know enough, I'm gonna defer to the PD staff. But I hear what you're saying.
It's highly vegetated, not a lot of trees, but it's got a lot of turf and it's got some trees and all the properties, except once you get on to, what is that, Truman, is it Truman?
Areas coming.
They're all single family.
So to me, a lower density, I think, it seems like R10 is different. than R1, R2 and R5 are less dense and more in keeping with the rest of the neighborhoods. We could say reconsider the zoning if they're applying for, just support you and see if they can back the change to that. Yes. I got
That doesn't fit into the thing.
Yeah.
What happens if you don't support them and we don't support them? They don't have an opportunity to change their application.
Mhm.
Okay, didn't know that.
There's also the planning advisory report.
Well, that is the point, yeah, through the public hearing process.
This has been part of the public process already. They can request, the council person.
Amendment. So that's, that
It's
instead
our
of revising it themselves, it becomes an amendment, and some other entity has to amend it for them. Okay, so they can't come in and amend their application at this point. They put it in and that's how it.
I think they could make send a letter to us, to you all, during the preliminary draft, I believe, and we can talk about it.
There's an
Yeah.
opportunity for hearing them, and then, okay.
So right now, we're supporting, well, I'm sorry, supporting what you, I think I hear that around the table. Except for,
Except for me. I just want to be consistent with
Right.
previous comments I've made.
Right.
And previously I've said that I think it's unfortunate that we're putting all the high density into parole and not looking at other opportunities in the county. And there aren't a lot of other opportunities. So when one comes along, I just want to just be consistent again and say, well, maybe this is one of those opportunities to have some more density.
I would push back and say it's not a county, within the region, we're putting everything into parole. The region looks very different than the rest of the county.
Okay, and I will rephrase it, the region. I mean, yeah, region's better.
I knew what you meant, but.
And I think the thinking here from the other side is that there's an inconsistency with that use in this location. The increased density might be a disconnect.
Well, I understand, and you're all supporting it, and that's fine. I just want to be.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm not misphrasing how I'm feeling. You could say, no, that's not what.
No, I just, just to be consistent in my belief.
Commendable. So I think, yeah, I think it's awesome. So I think what we have is consensus that's not quite unanimous, but we have consensus. Right. Yeah. You're allowed to do that. 70% is consensus.
Yeah.
Great. That's close. Let's move on. We're gonna run out of time here, Patrick. We got through all of them. But that was a pretty sizable area to talk about. So, yeah.
Yeah, we only have one more area at the top.
Am I making?
Oh, we.
So this is out in the outer neck area, and there were 4 applications in this area. One, okay, we'll start here. Let's just get this one off the table. The OPZ, or this is the Bay Ridge Civic Association pool property. It's the on-the-ground zoning right now is C2. We had recommended retaining the C2. The request was from the Civic Association, so they're on record wanting to retain their C2 zoning. And so that is what we had recommended. Then there were 2 that are kind of similar, and we talked about them briefly earlier. Desiree, if you can
Go up.
hand up so that. So there is an open space or, a conservation area within the Annapolis Roads neighborhood. And then there are a number of these parcels within the Bay Ridge community with our,
I think those are 2 different, very different applications.
they are different
So I
applications,
don't know.
but, well, let me give the overview. Plan 2040 in the planned land use, if you want to turn that on, had recommended that those be placed into natural features areas that you can see. You can see that applied here, and in the easement areas within Bay Ridge neighborhood were all done as natural features. We talked about this during yes. We had talked about this during one of our previous meetings, and OPZ, we're actually changing our recommendation. We're going to recommend that these areas go into open space zoning, and retain the open space zoning recommendation for those areas because of the easements that are on those properties, and those are protected into perpetuity. So it meets that definition of that. And I know that we've had a lot of community input that is requesting that those go to R2.
Stay R2.
Stay R2, thank you. Because that was the clarification I was going to make. The current zoning on the ground now for these areas is R2 and R2 as well.
But for all intents and purposes, they're open space in perpetuity for the use.
So they're not developed.
Well, I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because there is a private conservation easement, and it is the terms of the easement agreement were that they would remain R2 zoning. That's an easement purchase agreement. And there are lots within this overall easement that might be reconfigured for other purposes, and by rezoning this all as conservation and open space, that limits the community's abilities to manage their easements. And there's been a huge input from the community asking for it to remain in the zoning that it is in place. And I feel like one of the things that Plan 2040, one of the evaluation criteria was supposed to be, what are the residents and representative community associations want to see in their communities? And that unfortunately wasn't a criteria used when OPZ was looking at the zoning, but our community made a huge effort to put our input in, to say, please keep it. We have a private conservation easement. We're managing it with our own private funds, and we'd like it to remain. And I have support from the executive director of the Scenic River Land Trust, who manages easements to keep it R2, because she feels like it would be a huge disincentive to other property owners to understand that if they want to put in a conservation easement on private property, that immediately that property might get rezoned and considered devalued.
You know, so, I spent a lot of time in your neck of the woods, and it's just a really special place. It's large contiguous forest like that is just not found anywhere else in Annapolis that I'm aware of. And I'm just concerned that if we essentially keep it R2, are we making it vulnerable to future development?
Absolutely not. It's owned by the Civic Association as one property owner, and it has, we have an easement agreement, and we regularly have to have an approved forest management plan. We are maintaining the conservation requirements of our own properties. It's just that it is our private property, and there are some opportunities in the future to manage some of the outlying easement properties that are more into the neighborhood and possibly acquire other properties closer to what you're saying, the contiguous forest area, and make more sense, but this would remove our ability to do that. So, and the executive director does not feel like, she said she has no concern that she won't be able to manage our easement terms.
Is she the current manager?
Yes, Sarah Knievel. Okay. And we also have a support from John Chapman and at NET,
Maryland Environmental
and the Growth Action Network executive director.
I guess I'm confused. What's the conflict? I'm missing this. I just over my head because it sounds like it's all in alignment.
Except that it's private property with a private easement, and we want to retain the R2 zoning that it's always had.
And did you all suggest we were?
They want to change their, so yes, we all agreed on that about a month ago, but the county notified me that they want to reverse their decision. And that's why we had to come in with land use change.
They
request.
legally have to because it's under easement.
We don't have to legally do that. There's no connection between them. There is no connection. I mean, I've asked that question. There's no connection between zoning, county zoning, and how we want to privately manage.
Yeah, but easement will trump all of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a consistency issue with the open space zoning, which is supposed to be on full properties that are protected into perpetuity, and it's applying that zoning to those properties.
Were there other private conservation easements designated as open space in the county?
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. Well, maybe, but not yet. So we started with Plan 2040 and designated properties that are protected in perpetuity as conservation with the intent of rezoning them to so that would be inconsistent. Leaving this R2 would be inconsistent.
With the changing.
Then we would change the land use to low density, which signify, I mean, you know, it gives the impression that we're opening that for the, well, there is conservation easement that will pump it. It wouldn't reflect that and looks inconsistent on documents, models that we run, I mean, all sorts of things. That's one of the reasons that we're trying to stay consistent with the county on the funding recommendation.
Who are the parties to the easement?
Bay Ridge Civic Association and Scenic River Land Trust.
So those two parties could change they could decide to abandon that agreement.
Amend
The two groups could say we're going to
amend the easement.
amend the easement, or just not.
They might amend it. Like I was saying, there are some outlier properties, and there might be amendments made to make the big woods more contiguous in some spots.
Right. So what this does is it brings it into consistency with what the county wants to do. In terms of how those properties are controlled once the decision to put them into the easement has been made. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
How the properties are controlled. Is that what you said?
That's what she's asking.
Yeah, are you saying that? Right, and so when communities make these decisions to put these into, the conservation area, you're saying that's great. Let's take the property lines off of it and let's just go and say this parcel is now OS and that's the end of it. And it'll be that until someone comes in and makes a zoning request change rather than the agreement between two separate parties together that says it's in compliance. Is that what I'm hearing?
It gives it an additional layer.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing.
So the property owner, which is Bay Ridge Civic Association, and the easement holder, which is Scenic River Land Trust, do not feel that the county needs to add any additional layers to the protection that we have for our property. We bought the property at full value, and we decided to put it into a conservation easement with Scenic River Land Trust. It's a private agreement, and we would like it, I mean, we're requesting it to stay. It has been R2 zoning, and we're requesting it to stay.
And what was Sarah's objection? I'm sorry, you mentioned that earlier, her objection
He
to.
said that if, private property owners want to put parcels into a conservation easement, it could be a disincentive to them that, their properties would.
Have another layer of protection?
Well, they would change the zoning. It would essentially devalue because it isn't developable. So like, for instance, we have a mortgage that we have against the property values of R2.
So they're implying they could be developed?
That's what it's implying is that if you give them to,
Yeah.
and you undid the.
Yeah.
Undid the agreement.
Then it could be developed. But I'm reading the definition of R2,
Yeah,
and that's single family detached.
but we
mobile
have
home,
an
park,
easement
private.
on top of it.
And then I'm reading that the definitions of OS, and there's two different ones, and boy, it sounds like exactly what you're describing is the open spaces. I mean,
No, I know it's difficult to understand that the community would like it to stay the way it's always been managed is R2. I mean, I think that should weigh into the decisions made by the SAC because we're supposed to come in and represent our communities.
I have a question about the development. The reason, a lot of reasons for these needs is that there's tax benefits for putting properties into that protection. And so does that zoning shift undervaluing, does that change their tax benefits? Is that what we're talking about?
No, we're not talking about, I mean, it's
Money?
still zoned R2. We're not talking about funded money at all. We're talking about maintaining our private ownership at the level that it went into the easement agreement. I mean, it's zoned R2. It's an odd arrangement, but it is zoned in the conservation agreement as
Could that
R2.
conservation easement agreement be eventually abandoned by both parties and then that property be developed? as R2?
No,
Well,
It can be amended.
It could be.
In
two parties can agree to negate an agreement that's private. Is that right?
But when
I
they
mean,
do
that
an
is right.
easement, and again, what
well,
they
there's a critical area overlay. There's a lot of environmental overlays that probably would prevent it from being, but not to say, I mean, the county, the reason that Bay Ridge bought the properties was because the county had approved development of these areas. So
Right.
it's just that the community would like it to stay R2, and I'm not sure why this needs to change. And so that's where the community has sent in over 100 requests to keep it in.
And I think that's the same, I don't want to leave Annapolis Roads out of the conversation as well, but I think that's a similar, argument from their side on those two large properties as well.
they also don't want the open.
Right.
Well,
Right.
it's been zoned as R2 since it was purchased in 2005. And like Bay Ridge, we had a $3-point-something million mortgage, which won't be paid off for another couple of years. But part of it is also, it's also perception. When people look at maps and they go, oh, open space, I think they're trespassing on your property. And this is privately owned, privately maintained. In fact, if anybody damages it, we have to And we are in agreement with MET that we have to maintain it. We have forest stewards that have to work on this. And in fact, we had a couple of bicyclists not too long ago decided to build ramps in there and dig around trees and it got a little ugly. So, you know, part of it is perception. When people look at a map, they go, oh, great, it's open space. I can just go into the Key School property, which is no trespassing, and walk through. There's no discernible boundary, and then walk right through into Annapolis roads. And frankly, our insurance carrier thinks we should put fences around everything that we have that's common property. And so, you know, because of the concern of liability. So our biggest concern wasn't that we plan on redeveloping it. And we don't have any other, we're not like Bay Ridge where we have the flexibility to move that into a different area. But our concern is that it's perceived by individuals to be open space as an open space, county open space.
Yeah.
So the perception is because it's zoned open space, it's a public commodity as opposed to private space and private ownership, which are to clearly illustrate. But there are,
I mean, I understand if you
How is
read
yours
this,
done now?
R2. I understand though, if you read all the different levels, right, and you're sitting around the table like this, you understand what the definition of open space is. But if you're someone who stumbles across this or is looking for, you know, a way to go from one forest to another, or from one forest to the water, or things like that, the next thing you know, you may be beating off trespassers.
yeah, but it doesn't look any different today under one zone or another. So the perception of the public of whether or not they can use it becomes largely like, you know.
Yeah, but it would have previously because it wasn't, it was under two. It would.
No, understood.
Yeah.
But there are, I'm asking the question, there are occurrences where open space is private property.
Say that again?
There are occurrences where open space, while it's zoned open space, it's still private property.
Yeah, and then in our rationale, we even added, you know, zoning does not impact the property owner's right to control public access to the property.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So they can-
That's my point. For ours, there are some other underlying management opportunities that we lose if the zoning changes for
Right,
us.
because you guys would like to be able to move parcels around at
Yes.
the edge of this thing and bring them into the group or out of it. You guys want to adjust your open space. And
We want to make, right, because it's
Understood.
zoned and it's our property and we bought it and we're managing.
John Chapman said. So John Chapman's and.
Well, I'm gonna get letters from
Yeah.
everybody
He's
supporting that.
what?
He's supporting that. They support. I was talking to Sarah this morning. They support maintaining whatever the residents of the property would like to see their zone. It does not impact their easements. So,
And I will point out,
prefer the zoning unless the owner asks to change zoning and we're the owner and we did not ask to change. it.
yeah, and Priscilla, you did, just to highlight what you just said too, I mean, these are currently adopted on the ground, they are R2 zones right now, so.
Right.
And they're still being walked on by people that think they're open space and so on. So the label has nothing to do with people.
Bicyclists were from the community. We talk to their parents, but all I'm saying is if it happens from your own members in your own community, because there are trails. So right above that is the old Annapolis golf course. And so that is now Key School athletic fields. And they have no trespassing all around their fields because people from Annapolis come over and they climb the fence and go into the tennis courts and maybe things like that. And so there are trails that start at the street on Carrollton Road and go to the back of that property. And so it's very easy for people to go, oh, I'll just keep on walking on these trails and then they're on our property.
Regardless of how they're zoned.
It's totally about
Yeah.
land value and your optionality, right? Yeah. thank you.
And also that the property owners are requesting a zoning that has been in place for 20+ years
Requesting
and
the zoning to remain the same.
remaining the same. That's really all we're requesting. We've done, I think, an amazing job managing our properties. We intend to continue to do that. but we're just asking to keep it R2.
So one of my concerns is that the whole exercise that we're going through about zoning and so on is to make sure that there's uniform zoning, that zoning reflects what is being done there and that it's implemented uniformly across the county. So my concern is that if we say it's going to be uniform across the county, that open space will be defined as open space and so on, except in this, prime space down in Bay Ridge and Hillsmere, and then, there's special and different because they don't want this. It doesn't necessarily give the county, the rest of the region, or the rest of the county the right message that everybody's gonna be the same except certain areas.
So another requirement of the region of planning is to provide an opportunity for residents to participate in the planning for the future of their communities. Our community is pretty clearly defined geographically, and we spend up to $50,000 a year managing our easements. And we all have participated in the public comment period, and we've asked to keep the zoning R2 to allow us to have some flexibility in the future with management of our property.
Right, I think we all get that.
Okay,
So
but she
I don't
said
wanna- I
that
don't
it's
wanna
more important
continue.
to, I
Take
think
that
there's a
important time.
competing vision, and that is
Interesting.
to allow the residents opportunities to comment.
Right, I just want to get to a point where we can decide what we want to do and.
Yeah,
that's
the last one was a third, zoning change application from the Bay Ridge Civic Association was for this beachfront area that actually extends, around to the north. It is one parcel that's owned by the Civic Association. It's currently zoned open space and has been for a number of years, but I do think, it is a different situation. We were initially recommending that this be, retained as open space because that had been the zoning since the 70s. The community is interested in, having this be R2, changed to R2 zoning.
Right.
With the rest of the neighborhood. There's not a. We could support, R2 on this in terms of that consistency.
Well, and there's also, but there's also a court case that, there's a court case that said that beachfront property was deeded to each individual property holder in the Bay Ridge community.
Historically, I thought,
That was 1975.
yeah, that's,
Then when we
when I
purchased
worked
it.
out there with historic.
So,
And to be clear, there's a whole critical area and buffer modification or buffer, restrictions that come with that. The majority of this is under, there's a small portion where pretty much where the road, aligns and wraps right around and kind of takes over the beach that is within that buffer critical area.
Forgive me if I find it incredibly inconsistent.
Yeah,
well, there's a court case, and the attorneys on our board brought that to the board and said that it should never have been open space because the Hillsmere Community Beach is deeded the same way, and that's residential.
I'm just saying, I understand. though.
There's a lot of community beaches that are R2s.
I understand, completely. I'm just saying, if you're gonna make one thing and then one another. thing,
No, have them both R2, so we're asking for consistency in our neighborhood.
But it is open space now?
Yeah.
And that's been in place.
Yeah.
since then.
Yeah.
Here.
This one is not protected from the right.
Right.
That's the distinction of why we're okay with this one going on, because it's not under an easement. And there's other environmental regulations that
Yeah.
would protect it too.
It's,
And I think we looked at some other
There are
beaches just to
protections
see.
for it.
Yes.
Tell me more about that. Tell me how that is protected. Please.
Critical area.
Yeah,
well, that applies to
It's the Chesapeake Bay critical area.
is it?
Oh, yeah.
We did look.
We
into-
have a special tax district called Summer Erosion Control District, and we tax ourselves to to preserve that, to take out invasive species, to make sure.
What are the, why does it
standard-
need to be R2? What's the benefit besides the court case?
Well, what the residents care because it's, we pay for it, all of our property
Well, it's
taxes.
still part of property because it's open space though, right?
Again, the residents would recommend and are requesting that the community stay R2. Well, it's very important to, I mean, we've had over 100 people, you can see, if you looked on the sheet, we're asking for community input. We've had a lot of.
Okay,
I hear that. and I
this
honor
this is
that.
a
I
group
wouldn't say it's-
discussion. This isn't, respectfully, this isn't, a representative from Bay Ridge talking to us, selling us the group, like,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
we all understand. I just don't,
No, it's not, and I didn't mean it to.
I just don't think we need to continue that, but let's have a more open discussion about what everybody feels.
Well, I didn't know if all the facts were out because
I
the
think they're out.
comments, the comments that the county made did not acknowledge the court case that we submitted, did not acknowledge any of the comments that we submitted, so it just kind of overlooked a lot of participation that we spent a lot of time doing.
Understood.
That's the question. So what the county is wanting to propose now, is it fall close to the category of eminent domain? They had right with.
No, we're not, we don't see that, no, we don't
Okay.
see that as an issue, but that's a good point. I mean, that discussion did come up
Okay.
in our community. A lot of attorneys.
Because that has happened a lot throughout the county, and I'll say more specifically in the Black community. So that's why I was asking that question. And you talk about consistency have to be equitable as well. So.
Just concerned that for me to open space zoning would make it even harder to preserve. Like it seems like I think somebody used the term an added layer of protection earlier, so I hear what you're saying, I'm just wondering why would the community not want that added layer of protection for that space?
Because we don't need it.
You don't get
taking care
now,
of it.
it's short-sighted though, like what
I
about,
don't think it's short-sighted,
Or
but
do
you can
you-
have your own opinion. I just,
No.
we have over 150 people that have commented and feel like
Yep,
we
we know
are.
about the people.
Well,
Please. I want to move forward.
So
Let's hear from
I'm
others.
concerned about what we have in Annapolis Road simply because we don't, like I said, we don't have the flexibility. So I can see Lily's issue, if they want the flexibility to switch out property. How does one do that if this is open space and this is R2 and you want to switch? That would be my
Have you
confusion.
been doing that? Have you been managing it that way?
we are
Where you use that
prepared.
optionality to
We're
move property.
considering that right now. It's a lot of effort in the community to have that discussion and have a thoughtful discussion about that.
It's a big group to get your point.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get consensus.
Is there, I think Annapolis Road is prepared to step up. But I totally see Lily's issue, if you want the flexibility.
Well, I'm gonna make a proposal. I'm gonna propose that the beachfront at Bay Ridge be left as open space and not increase the potential intensity of use for that in this open space today. I'm also going to say that the proposal would include supporting the community for continuing the R2 for their internal component. And I'm going to finally include in my proposal that the Annapolis Road piece be open space as is the adjacent parcel. That would be mine.
Can you repeat this middle piece again?
The middle piece would be to respect the wishes of the Bay Ridge community to control that internal piece as R2, as they, because that's what they want to do with it. And that's just what I'm trying to get something out there so we can move forward. That's where I'm seeing is a reasonable balance, but I'm open to discuss.
Well, I appreciate the idea that we're honoring. Say that, in my original neighborhood. That we honor, I think we're consistent with that point, with your second
It's kind of splitting the day because they want that one. But I just can't stomach more. You know, that one just doesn't happen.
My question is with the Apple Rose. You said you were willing to step back. I just don't know
We're in a different situation because we
how it's
have,
different.
we have no other property that we would be willing to, that we don't need the flexibility to move one property to another. In other words,
To adjust those boundaries.
if we're gonna have the same amount of property and open space, we don't have the flexibility to move.
Right,
That's why I hear you.
that's the compelling difference. for me. But
Mhm. Okay, thanks.
sounds like, may not be there. What's that?
We're not there.
What are your thoughts?
I understand where Lily is, and what they had agreed to. The county is like any government organization, when they decide they want to change something, they find a way to do it. And I'll be an advocate very broadly, and very loudly against what they're doing, they want to do.
You're against things.
I'm on Lily's side.
Okay.
So are you saying that, the way I proposed it, you don't think that would work out? Because I'm just saying the center could be done however Bayreuth wants to do it. And I'm just saying the open space along the edge that's already been designated as open space would remain. I wouldn't go back to an R2 there. Do you think that's problematic?
I'm up to Lily, she's representing that community, she's had all these signatures from her community because of concern. And because we have the numbers to overpower that and say we recommend against it, doesn't make it right.
Do you think the beach could go to R2 because that's what the community wants? Okay, I understand that.
Yeah, I mean. I guess I have to take your word that it wouldn't be vulnerable, wouldn't be vulnerable for development in the future. I mean, the fact that, Scenic River Land Trust is, agrees with you, carries a lot of weight for me. I really respect that organization. Did CBF weigh in at all?
We didn't ask CBF, they're zoned commercial.
And I have a question. Did they weigh in on the beach?
Pardon?
They all weighed in on the beach piece of it as well?
Scenic River Land
No, we don't have it. There's no conservation easement
So
on
they're
the beach.
only
We have
waiting on
a
the
residential
Yeah,
property.
that's what I wanted to get
It's
clear.
our property, actually, the use is residential on our property tax document.
But the beach is designated as open space.
But
Did you
that's
say-
odd because it says the use on our property is residential, so it should be R2.
Did you say that those names that you threw out that I don't know, said that it should remain R2, or did you say that it should be what the community wants?
Should be what the community wants, and they were talking about the big woods where we do have two conservation easements.
So they weren't
So Bay Ridge has
necessarily
three
putting an
requests.
opinion for their own, from their own perspective on how they would zone it if they were zoning it.
Right, they said it has no bearing on the
their
conservation.
Strong.
They're very strong.
Let's see.
So, does anyone else want to offer, a different proposal or?
I'm with Tony, I would amend that the beach be, R2. Because what, did I say something wrong?
No.
I mean, because you can't build anything on it anyway, and that's what the residents want. And it's part of their land use, it's part of their property.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I hope the county understands what they're doing, because they're not consistent with the history.
I'm sorry.
Tell me more
They're
about
not-
that.
No, okay, I'm not gonna get into it. It's- One thing I'm saying is very sore point. My great grandfather founded Freetown, 1845, born free, okay? Some of my family was slaves, but 5.5 generations of my family were free. I've seen the trash that the county government does when they want to do, land we had thrown out the books. Okay, so the whole thing is, I'm going along with this because down the road, when they decide to do something else, there's a president that's gonna get. That's who I am.
No, I think you're right about that.
Okay.
Mr. Spencer's just taking me out of his side. Sorry,
Um,
which is really shocking to me. I mean, it's shocking to me because I still just, as a person who has a land use and conservation, I just don't understand why we have to have the beach. Not open, open space should be the beach, you know,
And understand.
but I appreciate everything you just said,
Okay.
and
I just stepped down from the Chesapeake Conservancy for personal reasons, and they want more open space. They want 30%, between now and 2030. They have 23 right now.
Yeah.
But I also understand the price that is paid for that.
Yeah.
Everyone, we're hearing just one side. And I don't know, you said you got 100 signatures. How many signatures don't you have? I guess, I don't know. I'm just saying this as a record, okay? The county has not been consistent. Okay, and I've seen families lose the land. I've seen communities be divided because 3297 Route 100. When I first county executive, one of this great route down Route 100 down to 50, all these black communities, okay? When it got to Lakeshore, they stopped and they haven't gone any further. Okay, so my great grandfather was one of, he was a trailblazer. I'm standing on his shoulders. And I would tell you what the fire department called me, but you don't want to hear that word anymore. Okay? So that's who I am. And that's because I stand for what is right. When I see injustice done, I'm going to speak to it. And I know this is going very long. What's up in Apple asked me to write an article on, give me 3 questions about what Black Lives Matter. And the guy gave me the question. Okay? And I answered it based on manifest destiny. Okay? You understand what manifest destiny is? Okay, the land that didn't take the hills of the Native Americans took it anyway. And now we have a legal way of calling it the eminent domain. If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat. So I just want it on the table, understand the conversation. I just want the equity. So if we're going to vote this way, it needs to be this way consistently, because I'm going to keep my eyes on it. And there's other people who will do the same thing. Okay? That's Tony. I don't take cash. You can't write a check. I'm just kidding.
So it's funny as if, we're struggling here because, maybe we break them into the 3 pieces.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, there's the commercial space, which I don't think anybody was arguing against, is to turn the.
That's staying the same.
Start with that, yeah, I mean, so currently C2, they requested C2, we're agreeing with that.
I think everyone agrees that that's. the right-
C2,
Yeah.
this is the pool property.
Well, so the first time that we got a letter from Bay Ridge, they were asking to change it to parks and open space. And so we asked for it not.
Because of the recreational use there.
So I think there's consensus on leaving that as a request for the community.
Beachfront, currently zoned O2, or yeah, O2, that's the OS.
Oh, it's.
Similar to opposite.
Currently zoned OS has been for a while. The community requests R2. OPZ is not uncomfortable with supporting that. Because of the definition of open space and the perpetual easement does not exist on the beachfront, and there are critical area buffers that are in place. So we could support R2 on the beachfront.
Was that
Now,
your position
SAC.
before tonight?
I'm sorry.
Was that the,
I think in the spreadsheet that I'd sent out to you all, I had indicated OS.
right,
So I would like
you're
to say,
adjusting it from that?
yeah, I would say that OPZ
R2.
is supporting R2. Yeah.
What persuaded you to change?
Yeah,
Conversations with our critical area team. And then.
what was the thinking?
No, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, we also did a look at some of the other beaches around to see what they are, and it's a mixed bag. It's marina, it's open space, it's R2. It's not really consistent. So just from that perspective,
So why aren't we doing all of those?
well, I think they haven't been, we didn't designate them in the GDP as open space necessarily. A lot of them are marina. So, that because they may have boat docks or other.
The marina is pretty clear.
Yeah,
Marina is a marina.
Did the court case have any weight?
Not,
I'd like
Has it been
to see
decided yet?
of that. But, I mean, yes, you provided a snippet in your letter. Um,
I referenced the case, but I can give you the whole decision.
Now, they recommendation.
Okay, let's just go
You know, you can say we don't have a consensus on.
well, let's figure out what
even know.
we don't know. So let's decide, like, so who among us is in support of upzoning the open space to R2 at a request of the community? And you're gonna vote?
Why can't I vote?
I'm just asking.
I vote for my neighborhood too.
Okay. That's
And I
good.
do think
I'm
it's
just
about
asking.
stakeholders. I think
Sure.
that's why we're here.
I looked
Yeah.
into that.
I've tried to be very fair and looked at all the criteria and based on.
I don't question your impartiality, and I probably should. Yeah. And who among us is in favor? Should we ask, is there anyone who's in the voting position on?
Can you unmute?
Oh,
Yeah, let's make sure. So who among the group feels that it should remain as open space as it is today?
I'm like conflicted. If I was forced to take a vote, I would say want to remain open space, but
We don't have.
we have
yeah.
From my point of view, I'd leave all the zoning as it. Rather than pick and choose, but all three of the remaining. Just, so I would leave that as open space, I'd leave both the others as R2.
And it looks like Emil's chiming in. He agrees
Yeah,
with Larry.
and he's agreeing with that.
Yeah. So let's try one more time. Who would agree with leaving the zoning as it sits today on all of those parcels? The three in favor.
Yeah, I mean, if consensus is the goal, you know,
I'm not any, I'm.
it's 8:30 also, like how many, like, do we have a whole other meeting to discuss, go around and around on this, or, you know, what's the?
We're gonna put a
protocol?
wrap on this in about 5 minutes. I just figured
Okay.
it was worth taking a shot at to see if we could reach consensus and make sure we understood everything. So
I'm sorry, can you just clarify though, if we don't reach consensus, what's the process? Is it stay as is? Does it just default to what it as
we
is?
have no
It
recommendation.
would,
We have no
This
recommendation.
group would have no recommendation.
For all three.
You could take a vote.
We could take a vote for each one of them.
60-some%, then.
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay.
Deal with them one at a time.
Well, I think we've already reached unanimous consent on this two parcels.
Yes,
So that
yeah.
can-
Have that.
So let's say we're gonna take that off the table, and that's done. So you've got the open space for the beach going to R2, and the R2 in the center going to open space.
And Emil voted how on the beach?
As is.
He agrees with Larry.
Larry.
So then that's a win. That's more than, that's 60%, isn't it?
Well, let's check one more time. So if we take the two off the table, there are two components left. The internal one to remain as R2, and the beach one
I
to
like,
remain
let's
as
do it
OS.
one at a time, because I'm asking.
Oh, okay.
You
So let's,
just-
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
thank
So
you,
let's do the
sir.
beach then. So the beach remains as OS. Who's in favor of that?
Remains as OS.
Yeah. So how many is that?
That's 4.
Four.
Four.
Five if you
Five.
count Emil.
Okay, and then the beach
Five.
to be upzoned to R2,
Only because I'm in
5 to 4, is that right?
Mhm.
So that's not, I don't think that's 60%, is it?
I thought it was.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I think 6 to 4 is 60%. 5 to 4, I don't think is. Someone do the math.
And people.
Nine people voting.
we can just note it.
I have to count.
65.5, is that? 55. So my math isn't as bad as I thought. So the reality is we don't have consensus and we don't have support for for that motion.
If they said yes, out of 9, that's 56. No, but it was 5-4. It was 5.
That's the way.
Yeah, 6 said yes, it'd be.
So at this point, unless we want to put this on the table since it's late and try and take it up again with more members present, we could do that at the next meeting. Or we could say we want to close this out. Who's in favor of carrying it,
Versus
making a decision?
making no, either carrying it over or giving a no decision on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who's in favor of carrying this over for continued discussion to the next meeting?
Let's carry it.
There's one.
How many people do we have on the, SAC?
13.
We're missing a sizable component of the group.
Yeah.
And who's in favor of putting this to bed this evening with no motion?
No recommendation.
1, 2,
Oh, with no, I'm
With
sorry.
no
with
recommendation.
no,
No consent.
no consent station. No, we're not taking a position. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
For now, we try to do a real vote on that one.
Wheels with Larry. Even on that.
I don't know. So what did you vote, Larry?
I just assume resolve it tonight. I don't know what additional information would be helpful.
Well, so I'm gonna go.
Abstaining from recommendation.
What's that?
Okay.
Hill votes to abstain from recommendation.
Okay, great. So, so I think, so I'm gonna cast my vote in the same slot, so that's gonna give us, is that 7? Yeah. 7, so the group has agreed that we're not gonna make a recommendation on Bay Ridge's open space for the beach or their R2 for the internal. We're gonna look at-
Oh, no. I'm sorry, no, I thought we were just talking about the beach.
Oh my
Talk about
gosh,
the beach.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, okay, so yeah, so let the record reflect that we're not gonna take a position on changing the open space zoning for the beach.
Right away.
Yeah,
No,
no.
sounds a separate land use.
Understood, no position on the beach. Finally, if everyone can indulge me for just a minute more, we'll do the interior piece that is currently zoned as R2. Who's in favor of continuing that as R2 per the request of the community? 5. And I'm gonna assume that we have 6 and there's 7 right there. And I had said already in my first motion that I was in favor of keeping the interior one as R. I think.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put my hand up. and-
I remember that, Leo.
I'm- And I want full credit for, by the way. So
And was that just the Bay Ridge?
just the Bay Ridge piece will be the last one on the top. So there's consensus on continuing the R2 for the interior portion of Bay Ridge as is requested by the community. And then finally,
Unanimous?
unanimous.
No, okay.
I'm sorry. Was there someone who voted against? Oh, I'm sorry, but there's consensus.
But you have a majority.
With consensus,
as well.
You don't have full consensus.
well, consensus, yeah, it's not unanimous consensus, but it is consensus. We didn't vote.
Right.
Okay, so let's move to the last one so we can wrap it tonight, and that is the Annapolis Roads piece. And the question is, should it continue? Make sure I have this right. It's open space now.
No, it's
R2 now.
Zoned R2 adopted right now.
Right, so there, I mean,
And the county's
It's-
recommending.
Oh, that's consistent with the whole thing.
and the difference between that one and the Bay Ridge one is Bay Ridge thinks that they may have the ability to adjust their borders and parameters. And whereas the Annapolis Roads community doesn't have that same ability, so it sounds
We
like,
don't have the same amount of acreage available vacant to swap out.
right. So that's the only difference is you're agreeing that the Bay Ridge potentially could make adjustments to theirs, whereas the Annapolis Road is a final. So, who's in favor of leaving?
Residents want to be.
The residents are less concerned about the change in the board because it's an SCBD, so it's governed by the board. But anyway, as I said, we're not the same, you know, it's.
Yeah, there's an inconsistency component that's a bit disturbing to me to say that one community can
Yes.
request to have theirs stay and another one doesn't for whatever reasons.
I agree, that's why I would vote to keep it.
I would also.
Yeah.
It's just for that reason.
So who votes to leave who thinks it would be a good idea to leave the zoning as it sits in that component as well?
That's our two.
That's hard too.
And that's what the board has requested.
Right, yeah. Okay, so we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 under.
It is ironclad. I mean, it's not like we're gonna go in and put a bunch of high rises up there.
Right, no, understood. And then, we have consensus for that, so we're gonna carry that way as well. And again, I think, well, we've already done. Like the consensus. So is there anything else you're gonna try and hit on our agenda tonight? Any closing remarks from anyone? Any other comments? I appreciate everyone, spending an extra 35 minutes with us to get this done, but I think, in an effort to make sure that conference teams can get where they need to go, is important to do it. So thank you all, and we're adjourned.
We had a great meeting.
Yeah, thank you.